The mercenaries, also known as simply the Mercs, are one of the most secretive and deadly organizations in the zone. They are one of the many factions the player will most likely face during their travels in the zone. But unlike the bandits, the military, or even the monolith, the Mercs are unique in that we have no idea why they're in the zone, or more importantly, who is hiring them. The Mercs are, well, mercenaries, so the only reason they are here is because someone is paying them to go into the zone. But who? This question has never been answered, and because of this it has led to many, and I mean many, theories to try and explain who could be behind the Mercs. From competing research companies that were not allowed into the zone, to crime syndicates and research and development companies who want access to the zone's strange artifacts. And while all these theories are very interesting, I think I have a better answer as to who is behind the Mercs. But first, we need to establish some facts, and also some conventions I will be using for this video. Firstly, let's go through some basic facts about the Mercs. They are mostly foreigners, as in the original Shadow of Chernobyl, they actually have non-Ukrainian accents. Some of them have like German accents and etc. So they're not Ukrainians. They are mostly made up of outsiders, foreigners. Second, they use mostly advanced and expensive NATO gear. Third, their suits are of Western design. I mean, hell, their look is literally taken from the early 80s to 90s SAS look. They are all sworn to secrecy and do not carry personal items on their person to avoid identification. All this indicates that they are a very well funded and trained foreign PMC, or private military company. This gives credence to the idea that they are hired by people outside of Ukraine, since it logically follows that if a Ukrainian corporation or research group wanted some artifacts, for example, they would just hire normal stalkers. It would be so much easier. So whoever is hiring the Mercs must be from outside Ukraine. And we actually do get some small bit of information about who these clients of the Mercs are. In dialogue with the character Leshy, he will say this: "We agreed to locate a very rare and incredibly valuable artifact for one large corporation. I won't tell you which because of a non-disclosure clause. We found what we were looking for. How we did it is another story. But no amount of money will ever make me accept a job like that again. I value my life more than these watermarked pieces of paper." Leshy claims his client is a large corporation but does not divulge details. Now, let me make this clear. From now on, I'm gonna be using certain terms throughout this video to refer to certain things in an effort to make it easier to follow. So here's how it's gonna work. When I say syndicate, it's the mercenaries, the PMC, whatever you wanna call them. When I say contractors, it's the clients of the Mercs. When I say the corporation, it's the ones who I think are the true sponsors, suppliers, and biggest clients of the Mercs. These guys are basically the boss, quote-unquote, of the Mercs. Now, let's continue analyzing Leshy and this quote of his. I personally believe that this large corporation Leshy is talking about is the corporation that sponsors and primarily hires the Mercs. Let me explain. The way I see the Mercs goes like this. There's the syndicate, the Mercs themselves being the grunts who go into the zone to do the wet work. And they are funded and sponsored by the corporation, who is their primary client. But of course, these guys being Mercs, they also accept work from other entities such as research groups, companies, crime syndicates, etc. These guys are the contractors who serve as a secondary source of revenue for the Mercs, being basically side jobs they take for that extra bag. But their main client is the corporation, and they're the ones who orchestrate the Mercs' bigger and more important jobs. Now, I know you're probably dying to hear me tell you about this shadowy corporation that is the main client and sponsor of the Mercs. But before we do that, we must talk about the group. The group are the original team of scientists who worked on the psychic experiments inside the zone. They are responsible for the zone's existence, and they are the ones who created such things as the Brain Scorcher and the Miracle Machine. They worked secretly, right under the Ukrainian government's noses after the USSR fell. They would later become the Sikh consciousness, the main villain of Shadow of Chernobyl. But all of that you already know. But something I would like to bring attention to here is that some people seem to think that the group was working exclusively in Ukraine with no outside contact, and that is simply wrong. What if I told you that some parts of the group, and I don't mean Clear Sky, some parts of the group are still out there? Yeah, I know, big claim to make, but let me explain myself. So firstly, no, the group was not confined to just Ukraine. In fact, it seems more people knew about the noosphere and the group was more present outside Ukraine than people realize. Here's the evidence. First, the investigation report you find in Agroprom, the so-called Project Truth report. If you're not aware, Project Truth was the Ukrainian government's investigation into the group. Now, this report is huge, so I'm not gonna read the whole thing. Instead, I just want to focus on this particular section. This section right here is an exchange of letters between two people. One of them is Dr. Petir Danilovich Strez. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correct, I probably butchered it. This guy is the head of the Agroprom Research Institute. He was recruited by the group and used this position to acquire materials for them, such as lab equipment and funding. The person he is talking to is Professor Vadim Mikhailovich Chubko, a member of the group, responsible for helping set up their clandestine operation. Here's how the conversation goes. Letter number 1 to Professor Chubko from Strezin, head of Agroprom Research Institute, Doctor of Agricultural Sciences. Dear Vadim Mikhailovich, as agreed, I am sending the next batch of consumable materials and equipment to our experimental facility to help you with your research, which is so essential for agriculture. I arranged financing for the experiments by describing them as pilot experiments in fields studied by the Institute, so there won't be any problems with the ministry. How are the experiments progressing? I am still deeply impressed by what you showed me last time. Sincerely yours, Strejcik. This is some basic correspondence, again cementing the fact that Peter here really is an accomplice to Chubko and is helping set up the group's operation and experiments. Now here's the second letter. This one is the one that really started my speculation. It's a very small detail that most people would just ignore completely. But one single sentence in this letter is what sent me down this entire rabbit hole in the first place. Letter number 2, Chubko to Peter. Please accept my gratitude, Peter Danilovich. We have received everything. My team is very impressed with the laser spectrometer. If not for you, it would take me eons to acquire this model through my channels. Of course, the Ministry of Agriculture will be happy to receive our results. You really made an old man laugh with that one. The experiments are continuing normally, and the things you saw last time are dwarfed by our latest achievements. You should visit more often. I am always happy to see you, and it's only an hour's drive to our experimental facility, as you called it. I almost forgot. I have news for you. Next Monday, I will be discussing your candidacy with the group. I think they will support me. Sincerely yours, Chubko. Did you catch that? No? Let me read it again. My team is very impressed with the laser spectrometer. If not for you, it would take me eons to acquire this model through my channels. Through my channels. What did he mean by this? This little sentence here proves that the group had other means of acquiring equipment and funding outside of the Agroprom Institute. The Agroprom Institute is not the only way that the group acquires its equipment. they have other contacts. And look what it says here. It would take eons to acquire this model through my channels. Think about it for a bit. Why would it take eons for his other contacts to give Chubko his equipment? Surely, if these contacts were in Ukraine, it would not take that long to transport the equipment from the outside of the zone to the inside. No, the only way that it would take eons for the equipment to reach Chubko is if these contacts are outside of the country. The reason it would take eons is because these contacts of his have to basically smuggle giant lab equipment through like 5 different countries just to be able to reach Ukraine. And I don't have to tell you, but smuggling huge scientific equipment throughout half of the EU and not getting caught would be quite hard and take a lot of time. This shows that the group has contacts not just in the zone or in Agroprom, but perhaps throughout the whole world. A huge web of connections that they use to be able to acquire their funding and their equipment. What? You think I'm crazy, huh? You think I forgot to take my pills again and went nuts? I hear you say right now. You want evidence? Well, here's my other piece of evidence. This evidence comes from an item called a notebook with a description of an experiment. You can find it in Call of Pripyat. The notebook contains a detailed description of an experiment assessing a Psy-Fuse effect on an object in another hemisphere. A group of scientists in the Caribbean received the signal, but it was distorted. The signal was altered in a strange way, as though corrected by someone. A possible explanation is that the noosphere theory is correct, and the changes were made by the noosphere. Yup, see that? The group was not the only one researching the noosphere. They are not the only ones. In this document, it says right here, they sent a radio signal to a group of scientists in the Caribbean, who then confirmed that there were changes made to the signal, implying that the noosphere theory is true. So this right here is exhibit proof that the group is not isolated. They work with other researchers and foreign groups. These Caribbean scientists are probably still out there wondering why the group disappeared. Perhaps these Caribbean scientists are pursuing their own noosphere research. Also, a quick side note here, but for some reason this document in the game's files is called Pripyat_A19_American_experiment_info. So make of that what you will. You know, when I look at something like this, it makes the UAV in Jupiter suddenly make a lot more sense, but that is a topic for another video. So since we have established that indeed the group works with foreigners, now we can finally talk about the Mercs. Yes, finally, we're back to the Mercs. Now, with all of that said, I think that the people who hire the Mercs, the people who primarily fund them, the ones that you could call their bosses, quote unquote, are the remnants of the group throughout the globe. And these remnants are what I call the corporation. The Mercs are being primarily funded and primarily work for this corporation. And this corporation is made up of X-group contacts, the same contacts that Chubko mentioned in his letter. These people, whoever they are, invested a lot of money, equipment, and time on the group. They invested all of these resources in the group and their clandestine operations. They are probably the ones who supplied them with test subjects as well, since obviously the group can't just go up to the Ukrainian government and ask for a few inmates. And after all of that, what happened to their investment? Nothing. The group vanished into the sea consciousness, and the other half of the group that didn't become the sea consciousness became clear sky, and they are also dead. So now this corporation has nothing. They got nothing out of their investment. Obviously, they can't just leave something like this alone. They knew what the group was researching, and they know the potential. So instead, they hired the Syndicate to infiltrate the zone and secure their investments. Like, I'm not sure if you understand this, but this literally explains everything about the Mercs. It explains why they have such good equipment, as obviously a huge conglomerate would be able to afford it. It also explains why the Mercs have so much intel about the labs. Think about it. Why would a Western PMC have such overbearing interest in these labs? And also have so much intel on them because they work for the people that supplied those labs. If they were working for just some random pharmaceutical company, crime syndicate or whatever, they would just go around artifact hunting or something and then bring the client what he wants. No, the Mercs are clearly working for someone who has an agenda within the zone. Want more proof? Sure. Here is a piece of text found in the PDA of a mercenary squad leader in Call of Pripyat called Black. And this right here, in my opinion, is the one that cracks the case. An excerpt of Black's PDA from Call of Pripyat. My man at the Research Institute will recommend that you lead the expedition. He will have to hire your boys to guard the bunker. That will make things easier for you. Remember, the client doesn't want any information about the operation of X designated objects to reach the scientists. If it does, we will not be able to leave the zone. Don't let me down, Black. There, right there. This proves that whoever this client is knows about the X Labs. They know about its operations and they don't want anyone to find out about them, because if the ecologists find the lab and investigate, boom, there goes their investments. The research they wanted out of the group is gone, so they can't allow anyone besides them to know about the X Labs. This also explains why the Syndicate attacks loners and other neutrals in the first place. Think about it for a second. Why does the description for the Merc faction mention that they sometimes annihilate groups of stalkers? Like, why would they do that? For what purpose? For what reason? No one is gonna hire an extremely expensive PMC to kill a bunch of random Slavs. No, the reason they use to shoot at loners is because they can't allow anyone to continue their own investigation into the zone. These loners the Mercs sometimes kill are probably loners who knew too much. Hell, in the original script for Shadow of Chernobyl, back when it was still called Oblivion Lost, the player was supposed to become one of these targeted loners, as the player was originally supposed to get captured by the Mercs when they visit S.T.A.L.K.E.R stash for the second time. The Syndicate follows people who are getting close to understanding the zone. They target people who know too much, because they're being told to. Because their employers, the corporation, as stated in Black's PDA, does not want anyone knowing about the X Labs. This theory also explains who the mysterious Serbin is. If you don't know, he's a random guy clad in an ecologist suit who is, in Call of Pripyat, featured in a mission called One Shot. In this mission, you have to assassinate two targets, a mercenary leader named Jackal and our man of the hour, the mysterious Serbin. They are meeting to discuss what to do about the X Lab in Pripyat. Serbin even has a red key card on him that opens a door inside the lab. This shows that he clearly knows a lot about the labs, to the point where he even has a key to one. This guy is, in my opinion, a representative of the corporation, who was sent to the zone to personally oversee Jacko and his raid in the lab. Because at this point, the corporation is probably starting to get really fed up with the Mercs' continuous failure to capture a laboratory. Like seriously, these guys are being like funded by the biggest glowies all throughout the world, and yet every single time the most important documents and the most important laboratories always fall in the hands of some random loner. Like, it makes sense that after so many failures they would just send a representative down there in the form of Serbin to try and get a more hands-on approach on the situation. In short, I really like this theory, and personally I believe it is the best explanation for the Mercs. Gives them a connection to the group, which in my opinion gives them a really cool background story as this PMC hired by the investors and contacts of the group so they can obtain the group's research that they supported but lost access to. And that's all she wrote. Now, this is a shorter video, just a little something that I wanted to put out there as a small theory that I had for some years about the Mercs. Now, about the other videos I'm currently making. So, the Ace video, it has become a project that is much larger than even the iceberg, and probably longer too. So, it's gonna take a while before it is done. And the other two videos, Modded Zone and Schizoid, are on ice until the Ace video is done. I will try to upload some more smaller videos for this month, especially shorts, as I want to grow the channel a bit before releasing such a big project like Ace. So expect videos soon, not big ones, but instead some smaller, bite-sized content. With all that said, that is all for this video, and as always, thank you for watching.